Hello, and welcome to another of the Nautical Institute's technical webinars. I am David Petreco with the Nautical Institute's headquarters staff in London. I'm thrilled today to be joined by some very passionate, intelligent people from around the world. We've got France, we've got India, we've got Canada, we've got Australia. So good day to y'all, whatever time zone you're in. I'm also pleased that this event is part of our AGM event. Those of you who are members, please join us after this for our AGM, our Zoom social, and we also have another webinar this afternoon on autonomous ships that people are welcome to attend. I hope that everybody is familiar with the Nautical Institute, but if not, we are an international professional body, and that means that our main role is to help our members with their professional development. And we also listen to our members and represent them in organizations like the IMO, IALA, et cetera, et cetera. And we do this because as a collective, as a membership, we listen to each other, we share ideas. And the reason we share ideas is so that hopefully we can help each other make better decisions. And those better decisions might be to improve safety, it might be to improve commercial aspects, it may be to improve parts of your life. But it's all about helping each other make better decisions. And as you will hear today, people who are struggling and needing a little bit of welfare support, they can make better decisions when they're happy, and we'll be discussing that today. So welfare is very important. This is an interactive event. Your cameras and microphones do not work, but you can type in a question. You have a little control panel. There's a question section. Type in your question and don't forget to press the send button. There's also a handout if you'd like to download that. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the chair. There will be, after the webinar, there'll be a pop-up survey that'll help. Jillian, you would have thought I've done this enough, right? But there's a little pop-up that gives a survey to help us do better. It's only 2 minutes, so if you can do that a couple hours after the webinar, you will get an email saying thank you for attending, and there'll be a personalized certificate there. A recording of this event will be on our YouTube channel, probably by the end of the week, and listen to it again. You can share it with all your friends and just do good with it. And you are not alone. There are nearly 600 of you out there. So when you do write in your questions, and feel free to write in the questions anytime you want, but when you do write it in, if you could keep it short and succinct, it'll help us address as many as possible. So now I get to introduce our chairman, Chaplin David Reid, Fellow of the Nautical Institute, sir. He's a member of the Spiritual Care Association, ordained minister of Roanoke, a hospice volunteer, a port chaplain volunteer, a member of the Federation of Fire Chaplains. And David, I did have to look that up on the internet because my imagination got carried away what a fire chaplain would be. Part of the Interfaith Action, author of this fine book on maritime safety, and a regular contributor to Maury Report. That's what he's been doing the last few years. Before that, he was a sailor. He worked on ships in ports at very senior levels before he decided to give something a little bit more back. So, sir, on that note, I hand over to you to start the deliberations.
Thank you, David. Welcome all to this Nautical Institute webinar. Today, as David mentioned, we have a panel of guests representing 4 continents, in all of them with a focus on seafarer welfare. But before we begin our conversation, let us all take a moment of quiet reflection to be mindful about all the seafarers who are, this very minute, on or off watch, moving the supply chain of the world. Some of them will be encountering heavy weather, facing the full force of the natural world. Others will be busy in a port, coping with the pressures that come with the ship-to-shore interface. Let us forget for a moment our own lives and imagine that we are standing in their shoes. So let's take just a short moment to reflect what it's like to be a seafarer. Thank you. Now I want to turn to our topic, seafarer welfare. Support is evolving. Now some may think of seafarer welfare as a nice to have. Throughout the history of seafaring, there have been regulations enacted to protect seafarers. Most recently, MLC 2006, the Maritime Labour Convention, contained both law and guidance in support of seafarer welfare. The truth is that seafarer welfare is an essential for safety. Those of us who've worked at sea know full well that when there's a positive environment on board, working communications improve and a collaborative spirit flourishes. During my service under the British flag, social engagement on board was encouraged, supported, and resourced by the shipping company. Why? Because they knew that this was a good business practice. It made sense. We also need to make sure that we understand the terminology when we talk about welfare. Unfortunately, the word welfare in North America implies financial support provided by the government to those in need. The word welfare conjures up people on the edge of society dependent on food stamps and handouts. When we speak about seafarer welfare, we're not suggesting or implying that seafarers require financial aid. What we mean is the well-being of seafarers. So in our discussions today, I want to embed the following as a takeaway, that when you hear or read about seafarer welfare, you evolve that to mean the well-being of seafarers. Now, I've been a member of the Nautical Institute since my days as a humble navigating cadet in the early 70s. For some, that's a lifetime ago. The Nautical Institute has always promoted awareness of safety and best practices. Seafarer welfare falls directly into this remit because you cannot run a safe ship if you have welfare issues. In my work as a chaplain, making a routine visit to a crude oil tanker in Philadelphia, this point was brought home to me by a Russian captain. Without any prompting from me, he opened up and he told me the following. This is what he said. Perhaps you have no idea of the value that your mission brings to the well-being of my crew. You make it possible for my crew to have a few hours ashore, time away from the ship. You help them to reset their minds, their mental state. I'll say that again. You help them to reset their minds and their mental state. He grabbed and shook my hand and said, "Please keep up the good work." Now, why would the Russian captain hold this strong opinion? As a former seafarer myself, I know the answer. This is the intrinsic value of taking care, the well-being of seafarers. When that happens, all the other functions of life at sea just come together holistically. Turning back to the relationship between safety and well-being, those of us who have participated in advanced safety training have learned that being safe has two principal components: process safety, the stuff that represents the hardware, the design and construction, and behavioral safety, the interaction between people and the hardware. DuPont's Take Two concept for behavioral safety teaches the idea of taking a moment to think before taking any action. But if we go one step further, we find that to apply that approach, the person has to be mindful of what they are doing and the consequences of their actions. People under stress from life matters risk not being fully capable of clear thought at a critical time. Time and time again in the Nautical Institute Mars reports, in the Nautical Institute Seaways magazine, we read about accidents that involve people in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, technically, we refer to this as situational awareness. How do we make sure that we have this state of mindfulness? It reminds me of my days as a second mate on a general cargo ship, working multiple gangs of stevedores over 6 cargo holds. I was taught as a deck officer that you can be present on the deck, but still oblivious to all that is taking place. Or you can be observant, but not having a complete comprehension of the consequences of what you're seeing. But to be really effective at the peak of situational awareness, you must comprehend all and be capable of projecting forward to anticipate. For example, you can hear and observe a wire cable on a winch and a winch driver who allows too much slack. You might be seeing a problem coming. Perhaps a near miss is about to reveal itself. Taking action means avoiding an accident. Situational awareness demands our full attention. When that is impaired by stress due to a lack of well-being or welfare, there is a latent defect lurking that is no different from any other defect. That is why we must promote well-being. We must embrace the concept that seafarer welfare or well-being has always been an integral part of keeping everyone safe at sea. So what can we do? Our panelists today are actively involved in positive engagement, ship visitor programs provided through the voluntary work of seafarer welfare agencies, create connections with seafarers of all backgrounds. They have evolved over 200 years of service from a monocultural to a multicultural service, serving the 21st century seafarer. They depend on fundraising and volunteers. Take it from me, former seafarers make excellent ship visitors. When we step on board, We are on familiar territory. We understand the language. We have the opportunity to make a difference just by our presence. And by the way, volunteering is a reciprocal process. Whatever you give, you receive. Now, today I'm joined by 4 colleagues who are themselves advocates for continuous improvement in seafarer welfare. We're now going to hear from each of them, and we can all learn by sharing in their stories and listening. So our first panelist is Dr. Jason Zuidema. Now, I've known Jason because of my association with the Seamen's Church Institute in Philadelphia, where I served as a chaplain. Jason currently serves as the executive director of the North American Maritime Ministry Association, NAMA for short. But he's also the executive director of the International Christian Maritime Association, or ICMA. He earned his PhD in religious studies at McGill University in Montreal, and he served for 2 years as the Montreal port chaplain. So you can see he's got real experience. Now, under Jason's leadership, NAMA has developed an online presence with the Mare report, and he collaborated with the Merchant Navy Training Board to develop the Ship Visitor online training program. So Jason, I've got 2 questions I want to put to you. So NAMA has been actively involved in ship visitor training. Seafarer welfare is all about engagement. So tell us, what are the challenges that your members face when they send ship visitors up the gangway? And second question, but I'll leave it to you to how you want to respond. Tell us about how the NAMA members have had to change in response to COVID. Floor is yours, Jason.
Well, thank you so much, David, for the introduction and for the kind words. It's great to be with you. Hello to everyone wherever you are, and very nice to speak about seafarers' welfare. Seafarers' welfare is always an important topic. So long as there's maritime, there is, I think, important insight to be had on seafarers' welfare. And it's good questions that you're asking, David. Interesting time to be talking about seafarers' welfare. The pandemic, I don't think, has changed seafarers' welfare, but it's emphasized the issues that were already present in seafarers' welfare. In our training, I think what's so important is how to respond to these regular changes in the maritime world. David, I think you said it, many of others said it. It's not as if change is new in the maritime world. The maritime world has always been changing, will always change. So change is nothing new, and learning how to respond to those changes as they happen is so important as part of our training. Seafarers' welfare can be a lot of different things, and you're right as well to say that the word welfare is kind of a catch-all. It can mean different things to different people, and it can mean things like well-being. It can mean mental health. It can mean also just straight welfare in the North American sense of that word. To give you an example, right now in Fiji, there are 160 seafarers from Kiribati who are stuck in a hotel with no money and with no prospects of going home. They're still stuck there from before the beginning of the pandemic. That's many of them 2 years or even more being away from home with no prospect of their government allowing them to go home. The questions are straight welfare questions. They need money. They need help in a very practical way. So many other seafarers, however, it's a question of mental health, or it's a question of helping provide a Wi-Fi signal, or helping provide just a friendly presence to come on board ships. So pre-pandemic, the thing that most seafarers' welfare, port-based seafarers' welfare groups did was typically transportation, bringing seafarers to the local shops, bringing them to the Seafarer Center, helping with communication services. Just like the rest of us, the internet is sort of lifeblood for seafarers. We can't live without it. Seafarers are just the same as the rest of us. So helping provide either free Wi-Fi in the Seafarer Center or a data-enabled SIM card, or just advocating for more internet on board. But a key part of it, and it's an underrated part of it, and this can be done by chaplains, but also ship visitors or any, is the friendly presence of the ship visitors, of the transportation, of the drivers, of the people in the Seafarer Center. The people themselves are important. That Seafarer Centers are not just buildings or vehicles, or we're not simply Uber drivers or those who are operating some kind of a market, but it's the people, it's their presence themselves. And some are sort of professional presence givers, one might say, sort of like chaplains who sort of specialize in this ministry of presence. But just friendly people with local knowledge are incredibly important. People that say welcome to this port. It's important because it solves practical problems. If I was traveling to another country and I was in an airport, or I went to a city center, I'd ask for directions or I'd ask for help. And that can be really important for seafarers, but all of us who are travelers. But it's also just in a foreign country, in a strange land, just having someone who's friendly, who wants to say hi and see how to help is important in all contexts. The pandemic hit, and we had to pivot away from those traditional ways of doing things, the transportation and opening our Seafarer Centers. And what we pivoted to was gangway-only visits. In most ports around the world, it wasn't possible to go on board the ships. It wasn't possible to bring seafarers to a Seafarer Center. So learning how to do those friendly visits when you have to stay 2 meters apart, when you're behind masks, it was a challenge. And many chaplains will say that it was a challenge, and yet it was so important. Learning how to have a presence online. Lots of chaplains, lots of organizations already had a big online presence, but many chaplains started to use WhatsApp and Messenger and all the different other chat features that were developed by other organizations. That became such an important thing. After that, one of the big things chaplains did was personal shopping for seafarers. And this one sounds like a small thing, but in fact, ask any chaplain who's done it, and you'll realize how much of an endeavor it is to spend half a day in Walmart shopping for 20 different people who have ordered different kinds of chips and soft drinks and whatnot, and trying to find that right kind of chips for the or crisps for the people on board. It's a real challenge, but a beautiful challenge. The last thing, and this one is interesting because it shows that it's not just about mental health or general well-being, whatnot, is the provision of vaccines. Seafarers welfare organizations around the world, certainly in the United States, it's where it started in earnest, but now in many other countries, including UK, Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, Canada, and other countries, hopefully soon. I would love to see this in places like Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Hong Kong, other places soon. Seafarers welfare organizations have proved critical in the provision of vaccines to seafarers. And the key is that we have easy access into ports and out of ports, either to bring vaccination teams on board or to bring the seafarers to vaccination points. As you know, ships don't always follow the schedule that you think they're going to follow. They might come in late, they might come in early. And so having that flexibility and easy access into ports has been important. So those, as far as my comments go, to see that the welfare provision can be mental health, can be sort of really soft skills kind of thing, but all the way over to the help with the provision of money, with food, with also the healthcare provision in that we're helping in this vaccination process. And it's an adventure trying to learn all of those different ways of helping, and to be nimble enough to be able to help in those ways is part of the professional development process. So that's a bit on teaching seafarers welfare and our role in the world today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And you know, I'm glad you were able to expand on the whole issue of the fact that welfare isn't just one thing; it's a whole spectrum of things, and that's great. And I'm sure everybody's going to benefit from that. Probably will come up in the Q&A. Anyway, okay. So moving on, our next panelist is Sister Mary Leahy from Sydney, Australia, from down under, as we say. So, Sister Mary, you have been described as the nautical nun and the angel of Sydney's waterfront. Wow. I mean, that says it all. It's just terrific, terrific. Now, Sister Mary was born in Ireland and chose to emigrate to Australia, I think 79. And she's a sister of the Order of St. Joseph, but she's also a registered nurse. So caring and compassion, these things are very, very much embedded in you. I can see. You've been serving as the Sydney Port Chaplain for more than 20 years, and you were awarded the Order of Australia Medal in recognition of your service to maritime ministry. What a pleasure it is to have you join us today. It's great. So I've got a couple of questions for you. So Stella Maris, the organization that you work with in Australia, state on their website that as missionary work, it serves all seafarers, all seafarers. So can you share with us some examples of how this works in practice, especially given the fact that the demographic of seafarers, you know, today in the 21st century is very different than it was in the early days of Stella Maris. And how do you cope with going on board a ship where the seafarers don't have an affiliation with a particular faith? That's the primary question I'd like you to share with us, and also, because we've been going through this COVID time, anything you want to add in terms of how you've been dealing with that in Sydney. So over to you, Sister Mary.
Thank you very much, David. I don't know how you found out all that information about me. I hadn't even heard of it myself. But anyway, lovely to be here. And look, honestly, the Stella Maris, I suppose, is, you know, a branch of the Catholic Church. So as you know, well, as you might know, but there are as many expressions of the Stella Maris ministry as there are people in it. So we're like that. Sometimes we're a bit of a motley crew, but there's a richness. And I think overall, we all do it with a good heart. And please God, it'll fathom out in the end and in the well-being of seafarers. Sometimes I think religious organizations, religion can sort of turn people off a bit in the industry. You know, they think, oh my God, there's another God botherer. You know, there she is going up the gangway, for God's sake. So I have had to do a bit of research and all that. And sure enough, I think sometimes the trimmings and the piety of religions can get in the way of really what we're on about. And I've got the pleasure of going back to the Catholic social teaching, which was the principles put together in 1890, if you don't mind, by a fellow called Leo. He was a pope at the time. And there's not a hint of piety in it. And it's absolutely lovely. And I'll just go through that. There are a few principles and it fits in, I think, if that's all right.
Yes.
So the first principle really is the life, the human dignity of the person. So I suppose when we meet anyone, there's the human dignity. I find, you know, when we meet a seafarer, God help us, you look into their eyes, you see a tradition, a noble tradition of ancestors and family. And once you touch into that, it's all personified in this human being in front of you. God help us. It's awesome. It absolutely is awesome. Like, so I think getting this being the starting point, then religion is not that important, really. once you've sorted out the dignity of the person, and then you're going to fight for that dignity. You're going to celebrate that dignity. You're going to actually improve your own dignity. So there's that kind of thing, you know, like when you go up the gangway. I don't know, maybe in recent times I saw a young lad from this Samoa, and he was getting into a bit of bother on the gangway because he let somebody in and he shouldn't have allowed them in, or whatever it was. And he had his beautiful dreadlocks, and somebody's kind of having a go at him, saying, you shouldn't have done that, you know. Maybe it might have been the officer. And I'm looking at the young lad, you know, and I'm thinking, back home in Samoa, he's probably, you know, a chief in the making, in a family tradition. So this is this dignity. So that's one issue there. So I think, like, after once that's established, that ship visitors or whoever goes with that sense of being overawed by the dignity of the seafarer, then everything else follows. The next social principle is the call to family, community, and participation. Well, my God, like, again, it's that link into their families. Tonight I got a message from a woman saying, look, I still love him, but we're fighting all the time now, sister. Can you help me? Well, as you know, I'm no expert on marriage counselling, but we have a crack at it anyway, you know. So there's family always. It's that family, and I think that was that social teaching, that we're all actually one family. And sooner or later, we've got to get that, you know, we come from different angles. But so another one is the rights and responsibilities. So the human rights, again, once we've attached ourselves to the dignity of the seafarer, we'll fight for their human rights. We'll encourage everything to happen. We'll speak in the places of power, and we might be unpopular at times. We'll knock on the doors of the ITF. We'll knock on the doors of the maritime people, knock on the doors of it. And they love us sometimes, and they mightn't like us other times. But we have to do that, you know, God help us. The other one is the preferential option for the poor. So amidst all the dignities and whatever, it's easy to identify the poor on any ship, like it is in any church, in anything. So identifying the most vulnerable, and I suppose on a ship, encouraging seafarers to have friends, have another person they can talk to. And of course, the dignity of work. My goodness, the dignity of work is crucial. You know, you might be the captain, but you might not be the leader. You know, I've been on many a ship, and it's maybe the wiper is actually the leader. The captain's the boss, of course, but it might actually be the messman who's the leader. So identifying the leader, and you've got everything. You're ahead of the game, and they're ahead of the game. Sometimes, and thank God, captains can integrate the bossy bit with leadership, and my God, we're seeing that needed at the moment. The other one is solidarity, of course, solidarity, that we're all in this together. They're seafarers, we're family, we're not separate. And of course, I think it was Oscar Wilde who said, you know, we live in a time where we know the price of everything, but we know the value of nothing. And I think that's true enough, you know. God help us, isn't it true? Anyone could tell me how many tons a ship is and what the cost of everything, but could we ever count the value of the people on board? That's another one. And of course, these principles draw us away from the religion, away from the narrow precepts of religion sometimes that can divide us, into a collaboration with everybody in the port. So, for example, I can only speak for myself, of course. In Sydney, our aim is to have a safe haven. So when the VTS talk to a ship, the welfare is already happening. You've got a ship visitor from VTS talking and doing all they need to do, but adding that little bit of extra, like, how are you? Welcome. Who's on board? Have you got cadets? Are there female seafarers? Because this can inform us with care packs. And then, of course, God bless us, you've got the pilots going on board who can transform that bridge from a boring workplace into a human part of it. And of course, so you've got the ship visitors there. My God, we don't have to look for them. They're there. They have to go and bring the ship in. And God bless them. they can transform everything. So the welfare is already well and truly underway. You've got the people on the tugs, how they speak to each other, how everything happens there. And then when they come alongside, you've got the stevedores, the wharfies, you've got the union delegates, they're all going up. They're our ship visitors. They're our welfare people. I know I'm trying to do myself out of a job, but that's maybe the way it needs to go. So you've got all that. Then we work on the terminal operators. You know, that might be another little challenge, of course. But ultimately, if everybody is conscious, you've got the harbour master, you've got the ports authorities, and of course port welfare committees have been a real blessing in this way in bringing people together. But it is a constant challenge to keep it going. So I think like that idea that, look, we are in all this together. We're all family. We're all the flesh and blood. You know, I think Pope Francis trying to encourage the Catholics to, whatever we do, to promote a culture of dialogue, you know, so that we can rejig the fabric of society where there's not the haves and the have-nots, you know, that there's a mutuality and a respect. So I suppose, as far as COVID is concerned, I suppose, God help us, I had to take 46 burgers to a tanker last year in the evening time, and it must have been the wettest day in Sydney ever God put breath in. And why I said I'd do it, I don't know, but I did it anyway. I could give the cook the night off. And eventually, when I got the hamburgers on board, because there were 4 vegetarian, 26 chili chicken, and then there were other ones as well. So when I got them on board, I was absolutely drowned to the skin. And when I met the watchman, he didn't know about the burgers, you see, so he had to do the paperwork. And then I got them on board, and I was, you know, apologizing to them all, to the captain, to everybody, saying, look, they put them in the oven, for God's sake, and heat them up, because they've been all good. And they took me up to the captain's cabin, and he was an old type captain. If you know, he had a handlebar mustache, and he was smoking, and he had one of those old ashtrays. And he said to me, take your clothes off. Well, I just took my jacket off because I was drowned to the skin. And then he made me a cup of coffee, nicest cup of coffee I've ever had. And it was the conversation that evolved as I was leaving. And there's a great honesty with seafarers, God bless them. You know, there's no pretense, really. He said to me, you know, nobody would do this for us. And I was honest back. I said, no, they wouldn't. They wouldn't, you know. And with that, he went into the bottom drawer of his desk, and he brought out this most beautiful, delicate envelope to give a donation, you see. And I said to him, there's no need for that. You know, you don't have to do that. And no, he wanted to do it, and wrote a beautiful little note. I'm there sitting drowned to the skin, developing the pneumonia, but it didn't matter. The dignity had taken over, you know, and God bless us, you know. And I admire everybody who helps in this. We've got the ship visitors, we've got them all. We've just got to build the relationships. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, wonderful story, and I love everything you talked about, the fact of getting the buy-in from everybody in the port industry, from the pilots through to the stevedores. I mean, that's just what a great message. So thank you. Now our third panelist is Captain John Menez. John's going to come on the screen here in a minute. Hello, John. Are you with us? Hello, John. John's here. Okay. So, John, you're a master mariner. You served at sea for 14 plus years. And during that time, you experienced firsthand the important role and function of seafarer welfare agencies. Today, you're both a consultant and a maritime arbitrator based in India. You believe in giving back to the maritime industry, and you do this through volunteering your time in support of the mission of seafarers. And you're also a fellow of the Nautical Institute and a member of the Nautical Institute's executive board. So it's a real pleasure to share this platform with you, a fellow mariner. And I have a question for you, John. So mission to seafarers have come a long way since the days of the Reverend John Ashley in Bristol. So where do you see the role of the seafarer missions in light of port welfare committees and the recommendation contained in MLC 2006? What changes do you see coming on the horizon? And as I've asked the other panelists, any thoughts on how COVID has affected what missions seafarers have been doing in India? So, floor is yours, John.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David, for this kind introduction. And yes, the mission of Mission to Seafarers has come a long way since the days of Reverend John Ashley in Bristol, serving the seafarers from 1836. After 185 years, the Mission to Seafarers still continues its mission to care for the shipping industry's most important asset, that's its people. Serving in over 200 ports, 71 countries, and over 118 Flying Angel centers. For any mission to succeed, you will agree that you need time, talent, and treasure. I feel that all the missions give their time and talent. And for the missions to succeed, we have donor organizations who would like to contribute their chip with the treasure. As you will know that all the mission organizations have been over 150 years in existence and time tested for their zeal, integrity, and commitment. The port welfare committees are just about 10 years in some ports, and in some ports yet to take off. It will take a while for them to get themselves established and prove their worth. But at the same time, the port welfare committees are not spread across the minor ports. We have 1.5 million seafarer base to cater, and there is ample room for everyone. And it is time that the seafarers mission work alongside with the port welfare committees for a win-win situation to the welfare of the seafarer. Now, what I would like to do is that the seafarers mission give a human touch rather to shed a tear of sympathy at a seafarer or apply the soothing balm of the.
Oh, I think we've lost John's audio.
Yeah, I think so. Let me. Why don't you bring Jillian on, and I'll try to get to John.
So, Jillian, are you able to jump in? So, due to the technical difficulties, I'm going to move on to Jillian. So, Jillian, obviously, a special welcome to you, our president of the Nautical Institute. What a pleasure it is for me to introduce you. So for the benefit of everybody else, just quickly, Jillian has a background, a fascinating background, starting her career in the Canadian Coast Guard, and being at sea and ashore, and then working as an instructor in the Coast Guard College. And I have a little bit of, I spent 7 years in Canada myself, and I served in the Canadian Merchant Marine. And I was on a ship in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, rescued by a Canadian Coast Guard icebreaker one winter. So I never got the chance to say thank you. So I'm now officially thanking you for that. Anyway.
Well, maybe it was me. You never know.
Well, it might have been. I'm going to assume it was you. So, and then Jillian moved, not content with that, she moved to France, working there. and then on to Australia, where she worked with the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, managing vessel traffic and pilotage services. So, wow, you have got an impressive background. Now, Gillian also has a strong passion for seafarers' rights, and she's worked very diligently with the branch, the NI branch in Southeast Australia, supporting both Mission to Seafarers and Stella Maris. And it's her passion and compassion working in this field to support seafarers. Of course, over the past year, in her capacity at the Nautical Institute, she's had a new platform to bring that passion and compassion to the forefront. So, Gillian, my question for you is this. During your tenure as the president of the Nautical Institute, you've been at the helm during really a very difficult time because of the global pandemic. And that brought about, you know, a need to change even how you perform that role. Now, in your most recent update that you sent out to the members, you referred to the need for fresh thinking. I love that term. I think that's just really, really excellent. Now, seafarer welfare has been on the radar screen in lots of places over the last year, and I think perhaps COVID has kind of brought it forward a little bit. So my question is, are we rising to the challenge of fresh thinking, or do we risk losing momentum? So over to you.
And that's an excellent question. You're right. It's been a really challenging time to take on this role of president of the Nautical Institute during a global pandemic. It's been a very unique experience and lots of opportunities, I think, that have been provided to us. So how can we approach the support that we provide to seafarers with fresh thinking while addressing those very basic principles that Sister Mary brought forward, the focusing on people, their dignity, their families, their communities. I really loved that, sort of going back to basic. And we've heard so many great ideas. Listening to these comments that we've heard, we do have some momentum. We can say that we have momentum right now around recognizing the significant role of seafarers. Now, does that specifically address their welfare? I think in the long run it does, but really what we're looking at is how do we make sure we keep the momentum that we have in the coming months, in the coming years. Seafarer welfare is centuries old. The tradition of supporting seafarers is nothing new, as we've heard before. And we're very good at expressing our indignation at the treatment of seafarers within our own industry, within our own echo chamber. But I've said it many times before, we need to get this beyond the maritime echo chamber. We cannot just keep talking to ourselves and telling us what we need to do inside this echo chamber. We've made a few inroads into mainstream media, which I think is a really good way to keep that momentum going. Because if we go beyond what we have within the industry, then we can actually bring in more energy and innovation. It supports this concept of diversity and innovation when we have this going together. Just yesterday, there was an article. It was posted on social media from one of my colleagues that I have. It was these pictures of empty shelves in Tesco shopping markets. They were being stripped bare. But there was not one word in there about the fact is, why are those products not available? Where do they come from? How is shipping critical to that supply chain? So we really need to make in the minds of everyone how important it is to have the shipping work. The ships that make the supply chains go, they enable us to go to shops. They enable us to buy what we need. Those ships need seafarers. And while we might see the ship, do we actually even see the seafarer? So even when we're getting out of our own echo chamber, we're talking about the role of shipping for the cargo chain, supply chain. Are we actually talking about the people aboard and ashore, so afloat and ashore, who are making that work? So I think we need to encourage innovation. We started in that move. We need to encourage more innovative responses to support and to enhance the lives of seafarers and their families. We've heard of some great innovative responses already. Providing services online, the chaplains online, bringing mindfulness training. I participated in some training that's being provided via the internet to the seafarers at sea, sometimes with varying degrees of success because of internet challenges. But what are those opportunities? And the additional things of bringing the shops to the seafarers, the personal shopping. I love that image. I was just a great picture there. And recognizing Sister Mary's example of what's happened in so many areas of everyone is providing welfare to the seafarer in the true sense of the word that you provided at the beginning, David. The vessel traffic services at the very beginning, the VTS are talking to the ships. So they've got that connection to the shore, the first point of call. The pilots bringing, they have to go on board anyways, and using and having that, the opportunity to talk to pilots who've had this engagement. It's been just amazing to see that. The link from ship to shore, the port teams, every single person involved in the shipping industry can provide that welfare support. It's a much broader picture. If I was to sort of narrow this down to maybe 3 key areas, I would love to see us raise the profile of shipping beyond our industry, highlighting the importance and the value that seafarers bring to society as a whole. And we can do this as maritime professionals. We have to spread the word, tell our neighbors, tell our friends, tell our children's friends, tell our children's friends' parents, the people that we meet in the grocery store line. It includes recognizing seafarers as key workers, which we still haven't seen in many nations, and making the provision of vaccines a priority for seafarers. So I'm really pleased that was brought up. Number 2, providing options for communications. We know we need to connect. Connection is so key and important to us. If we can have millionaires flying to the moon, putting up satellites, providing global communications, why can't we get broadband internet to every single seafarer, every single ship? Yes. You know, why can't we get there? Yeah. Surely there must be an Elon Musk, somebody in the world who's going to say, listen, we'll just give you seafarer, we'll give you internet connection. And this supports not only their connection to their families, but also they can do their continuing professional development, the things that the Nautical Institute are there to support. And I think most importantly, as we look for innovative and fresh thinking on how we support this, we need to ask the seafarers, what do they need? What can we do best to support them? I went to sea a number of years ago, but what do they need now? And what can we do as communities of experts, sharing our knowledge and working together so that we can do so much more than we do as individuals? And the NI has a role to play here. As a member of the Nautical Institute, speak up. Support your local welfare center. Volunteer. You don't have to be a former seafarer to be a volunteer. You can be a maritime professional ashore on leave. You can be a VTS operator. You can be a maritime lawyer. You have something to give. And the seafarers really do need that support. It is critical to our industry. And remember, you're never too young to volunteer. So our cadet members, our student members out there, the Seafarer Support Network, it is there. You can be part of it. You'll receive it and you'll give it. And it just makes it so much better. So I guess that's sort of where I wanted to come from.
Thank you so much. It's excellent. I know we're running late. So David Patrico is going to discipline us now for our lack of timekeeping. But I think it was well worth it because each of you have really delivered so much content. So David.
Yeah, thanks very much. And could I invite? I think we've got John Menez back, and Jason, if you could join us. We do have a couple minutes. The comments have been flooding in, and huge support for what you guys do. We're not going to get to all the questions, but I've got one from Sashidrin saying, nothing is more comforting than for the crew to see a familiar face of one of your own when you come to visit us. So there are so many there. And Sister Mary, you've got a fan club, no doubt about it. And, internationally renowned. one of the big comments, and we're not going to solve it here, and I'm happy to do another event, is the shortness of time in port. So as much good work as you guys do, ships are flat out in port. They're only in port for hours, not days, and there's just not the time. And that's before you get into the security about trying to leave the port. It's before you get into the COVID restrictions and everything else. So, as much good work as you do is fantastic, but there's just not enough time to do it in. But I got a very interesting question from Colin, and Colin must have missed the bit where I said keep it short, because it's not, but I'm not going to read it all out. But the gist of what he's saying is fantastic is the welfare provision by your organizations. Can we do more on board to support ourselves on the ships? And he says, even if you just go up to somebody and say, how are you? So,
Absolutely.
from enthusing, giving people on board the tools to support each other, what can they do? Some top tips.
I think that's one of the things I touched on in my opening remarks. When I was at sea with British ships, one of the things they were very concerned about was social interaction on board, and the company were very concerned because they felt that everybody was just cloistered in their cabins when they were off watch, and people weren't getting together. And of course, back in the day, they would make sure we had a library, we'd make sure we had movies, and we had a movie night where everybody gathered together. So it was simple things, but they were designed to create this kind of social interaction on board. And I know I've been reading some of the work that ISWAN has been doing, and they've been talking about these kinds of subjects again. So it's like we're coming back around to talk about things that we've discussed before, but of course ships have changed, the manning has changed, the demographic of seafarers have changed. So we have to keep revisiting this stuff and promoting it.
And also personal electronic devices.
Yes. Yes.
Right. I'm really sorry to everybody. We are out of time. I would love to have everybody go around that argument itself, but we really can't. Hi, John. Great to have you back.
Yes. Sorry about that, John. We were just losing you there.
So for some of you who visit these webinars, you'll know that I wax on about how nice it would be for you to become a member of the Nautical Institute. But I'm not going to do that. Even though it's the AGM, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to get our president to do it. So, Julian, maybe a word about the branches.
Okay, David, I'll take it. I'll take it from here. Yes, as you know, I really believe that the branch network is just an amazing element that we have within the Nautical Institute. So please visit your local branch. If you're not a member of the Nautical Institute, go on to those handouts and download that handout. And if you have any questions, make sure you ask David. No, you can ask me too as well. You really can. And that if you aren't in the NI, you probably should consider being in the NI. There's so much energy. It's such a diverse and supportive environment. It is my professional family, and I would really encourage you all to consider, go check out the website, join the NI, and if you're in the NI, make sure you're as active as you possibly can be within your branch. And we also have opportunities now with these electronic webinars. Many of the branches are putting their meetings online. If you're not available for your own branch meeting, check out the website. They've got all the events up there, and you can join some of the other events that are happening. So is that enough, David?
Perfect, as usual, Julian. Thank you very much. So on that note, we have run out of time. Particularly like to thank David for handling that so well, and for all the speakers for the passion. Hopefully the members of the Nautical Institute, the people watching this, We've also been, Sister Mary, we've had lots of comments about how nice it is that you've recognized the pilots and the VTS and the contributions that they make. So that community is very happy. Yeah, thank you all. And
Thank you.
some of you I will see in an hour's time.
Okay. Thanks all.